If you care about your health, these tariffs are an awful, awful thing for the US. And I'll tell you, I live between Italy and I live between the US. And through that, I've learned how different the food is between Italy, Europe, and America. These are two Fantas. This over here, Italian. This over here, American. They are both the orange Fanta. What's the difference? This is the color orange. This one has 12% real orange juice. If they isolate the US even more than it is currently, we are not even going to have access to things like the Trader Joe's. This pasta is from Italy. There is one ingredient here. There are many different ingredients in the pasta that we get in the US. The stuff that we get that is imported has a few ingredients. All of the stuff in the US, if you look at chocolate or anything, the US food is crap. Here is coffee. This is the Italian version. Did you know that the coffee that is in the US, they're allowed to have more mold in it? The standards in the US are terrible. They allow a bunch of chemicals that they don't allow in Europe. And so we can do things like shop at Trader Joe's right now, get international food, and while it's a bit more expensive, it is not twice as much. And we know how much groceries are. So if we isolate ourselves, here's another example. This is Frutella. These are Italian gummies. Real fruit juice, real coloring, natural. I just saw an article that was saying Haribo manufactures in the US as well. But did you know that if you buy Haribo gummies in the US, it's made with crap ingredients, lots of fake ingredients, whereas if you were to buy the same Haribo in Germany made for the Germans, it's actually has natural ingredients. So if we create the US as an even more isolated island, we won't have even the opportunity to get food or even know that there's a difference. This is extremely dangerous. And the Kennedy RFK, that was the one hope that at least our food could improve. But this is going to make it so much worse. So if you care about having access to somewhat reasonable food that's higher quality, this is not a good sign, because already the food in Italy is so much better than in the US, and people don't even know the difference. This has something like 4 ingredients. In the US, we're so used to seeing like 40 ingredients. This is very bad news for our health and our eating. This is very bad news.
Is America isolating itself from good food? The hidden dangers of tariffs that you never knew. Imagine a world where Americans are cut off from the finest cheeses of France, the freshest olive oils from Italy, the purest chocolates from Switzerland. Now imagine walking into the grocery store and finding only heavily processed, low-quality mass-produced food. Thanks to rising tariffs, America is slowly isolating itself from the global food supply. Stick around, because what's happening behind the scene might soon change what you eat and how much you pay. Tariffs, once a tool for protecting domestic industries, are now being used to heavily tax imported foods. European wines, fruits, and even specialty grains slapped with extra costs that make them too expensive for most Americans. Some suppliers have stopped shipping to the US altogether, seeing the American market as too difficult to bother with. This isn't about luxury foods. It's about access to healthier and more diverse food options. Options most Americans are losing every day. The truth is, the US food system relies heavily on processed shelf-stable products. Without a steady influx of high-quality imports, Americans will have fewer choices, and the ones left behind are often packed with preservatives, added sugars, and questionable chemicals. Studies already show that highly processed diets are linked to obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and even cancer. If tariffs keep climbing, America's health crisis could get much more worse. Imported food helps stabilize the American market by adding varieties and competition. Without it, prices skyrocket, selection shrinks. And in times of drought or crop failures, like we already see, the lack of imports could lead to real shortages. Supporting local farmers who prioritize quality, demanding better policies from the lawmakers, and staying informed. These are small but powerful ways we can fight back. Food should be a right and not casualty of politics. Will we embrace the world's bounty or wall ourselves with mediocrity? Let's make sure it's not the latter. If you care about your food, your health, and your future, like, share, and subscribe for more deep dive.
I go to college in the Netherlands, and every time I come back to the US, I have to see a nutritionist because my stomach is in shambles. So I want to talk about the two biggest differences I've noticed between the food in the Netherlands and the food in the US. Number one is not talked about enough. When you go to a grocery store in the US, you have like sugar-free yogurt, sugar-free candy. You have all of these substitutes that seem like the healthier option, but it's actually just extremely processed and hard for your stomach to digest. And no wonder you can't find these alternatives in Europe. Number two, the supermarkets in the US have so many options. If you go to a cereal aisle in the US, you're gonna have like 40 different cereals to choose from. And when you go to the cereal aisle in Europe, you have like 5 different cereals because half of the ingredients that are in the cereals in the US are just banned.
Well, I certainly pay attention to the ingredient label when I'm purchasing items, and it's true. It's absolutely true. The ingredient list here of almost everything in America has so many different items, things you can't pronounce, things that shouldn't even be in the food, things that you wouldn't even want to eat if you really knew what it was. And like she had mentioned, you know, there is the hope with RFK Jr. that certain things are going to be banned, like food dyes and other additives that are not even allowed in other countries like Europe. But as she mentioned, it is interesting that if a lot of these imports are not going to be available to us, or maybe they're going to be at a much higher cost, Americans are going to be looking at cheaper options. And a lot of times the cheaper options have a lot of these chemicals and all kinds of stuff in it. Now, if you need to eat, you're going to eat, right? You're going to get items from the dollar store. You're going to go to a food bank. You're going to get whatever it is that you can afford, because at the end of the day, when you need to eat, you need to eat. But it does make it more difficult if you want to have a little bit better of options. So realistically, I think getting back to basics, you know, finding basic meals that you can make yourself out of basic ingredients like rice, beans, even pasta. You can find pasta with just a couple ingredients in it. When I go and look at pasta, they don't all have a bunch of different chemical additives in there. So you can still get basic pasta for very cheap. But you want to get back to basics, especially if you're concerned about having a lot of these chemicals in your diet. So it just really brings awareness that, you know, the tariffs are going to be affecting all of us in a lot of different ways. So not just our pocketbooks, but potentially even health-wise, depending if you do source out some of these more healthy options. I don't go shopping at Trader Joe's or Whole Foods or Sprouts or any of these other healthy stores very often because it already is expensive enough as it is. I do like them very much, but because of the price point of a lot of items, I'm usually going to stores that are going to be cheaper. However, this is going to probably even increase all the more so with the tariffs that are being enacted. So also, I think it's a great time to start getting into maybe baking things more traditionally. So learning how to bake bread. I know for some people it seems archaic, but it's not that difficult. And there's a lot of great recipes online that we can utilize to bake, use basic ingredients to bake bread. And another good option too for like the morning is oatmeal. That's a really good pantry item that doesn't have to have a lot of chemicals, especially if you don't get the kind that's already prepared with a lot of different flavors, but just plain oatmeal. And you can add your own fruits and nuts and anything that you really like, maybe a little bit of honey, some kind of peanut butter or almond butter. I mean, you can still be really healthy with it and make it taste great. So maybe challenge yourself to incorporate some things like that into your diet. Another thing I'd like to share as well is that sometimes if we can't always opt for eating a lot of the healthier options because of the price point, it's good to incorporate some other things into our diet that has a lot of nutrients. So you can take vitamins, obviously, but there's also certain powder products that I love to take. I have like this green powder and this red powder. They're basically powdered formulas from fruits and vegetables that when I take, I know I feel a big difference in. So I try and take those things all the time. And even if my diet is not completely on point with everything healthy all the time, that does help. So if you don't do anything like that, maybe consider it. Anything that you can find most of the time is pretty good. I definitely do recommend checking the ingredient list, because you'll have a lot of different products out there that maybe aren't always going to be the best. They might be a little bit subpar, but if you're looking for something that is affordable and also good for you,